Over the last few days, and with a couple still left to go and a few creators yet to compete, I was challenged to push Humankind too far, and there were real prizes involved, including game keys and merch, and now they've extended it to you. The Push Humankind Too Far Community Challenge. It's similar to the creator one, but there are some changes to the rules. I can share some tips and strategies a little bit later in the video, but first we should upfront what the community version is, and then secondly, what the prizes are, because they are very real and very exciting. So, for the community challenge, running from April 14th to April 20th, so you have a few extra days, it is still push humankind too far, reach the pollution endgame as fast as possible, screenshot your performance, and tweet it to us using the hashtag #PushHumanKindTooFar. The game settings are the same as the creator challenge, so it's 10 total players, 9 of them are AIs, 1 of them is you, on blitz speed, nation difficulty. The only end condition you should have activated is the pollution threshold, and it's on the True Earth map by Oscar. The exciting thing here is there are direct rewards straight to you. So unlike the creators challenge where they were sort of given to us and then we are to distribute them out to our communities in whatever way we choose, if we're lucky enough to get them, you get it direct to your door. The first top prize is a Sega catalog key, which I think includes something like 150 different games inside of it. It's incredible. And then bringing your way down through merchandise, gift cards, gift codes, and a key for Total War Warhammer 3 in third place. That's what's on offer. Let's talk a little more about the challenge now, how I approached it, and a couple of changes to your rule set and how it's being ranked. The key difference, and you can find this on the Games Together website, the forums essentially for Humankind, is how the winners are selected. And this works differently. So in this case, for the community challenge, you are required, like I was, to reach the pollution end condition as fast as possible. Lower turn numbers are better. That is a key difference for the way that they're scoring this. After that, they'll then look to fame. So there are 3 different tiers. The main one is literally just the number of turns in the game until you can end it. Then it breaks into, okay, well, let's see how many turns it took you from the industrial era when pollution started to be a thing. And then if that's not enough, they'll look to fame. But if I was you, I'd be focusing on the first one and then considering the second. So here is my world. You can see on turn 89, I've crossed over the threshold, which on blitz speed is around 32,000 total pollution points. That's how much you need to pump into the atmosphere. At this level, there are extreme impacts on food, your populations will start to starve, and also on stability, something very important to keep in mind. However, you'll likely get to a point where your stability doesn't matter so much anymore. The only time that it will, and you'll see as I zoom in on my city here in Memphis, where I started in the Southeast Asia spawn, you'll see that the stability has just absolutely dived, and that's prevented me at the end of the game here from building any more districts. Thankfully, that's not a problem because Memphis is full. However, as you go through, you'll want to try and stack as many makers' quarters as you can. These are key. They provide at maximum +8 pollution. You can see them down the bottom left here of my screen, providing +8. Thanks to city infrastructures and the fact that they're makers' quarters. These will be your key. However, farmers' quarters do also provide +3 pollution, potentially. But you want to be focusing on the makers' quarters, potentially even more so than some of the polluting districts that you'll unlock as you move through the eras, like the aerodrome and the train stations, which both provide +5, which is good, but remember, just not quite as good as the makers' quarter itself. In my challenge, I was forced to stay behind the industrial era because that was my key win condition. How many turns I could burn the world after entering the industrial era. You'll see, thanks to choosing Joe here in the early modern, I was able to jump into the tech tree and dive right ahead and grab the industrial technologies because I was playing as a scientist, and that let me research one era ahead of where I actually was. A key part of my strategy. And if you're after that second place, that tiebreaker, then this will be a key part of your strategy too. But don't forget, the primary focus for the community challenge is just the number of turns. So, what might that do to your strategy? Well, if we take a look back at mine, it will look fairly similar, I would say. You'll move through relatively quickly into the ancient era. Make sure you've grabbed a few populations and got a food spawn if you can. in the first turn, that would be wonderful. As you move through, you'll likely want to choose the Egyptians because they're a builder, and this challenge is, like I say, about filling the map with Maker's Quarters, balancing them out with garrisons so you can keep your stability just high enough to keep on building, and build your way up until you have enough of those districts that will start producing a lot of pollution once you get the infrastructures in place. You could also consider choosing Joe in this era as well, though. The extra stability on districts and the early science, to a certain extent, is pretty good and pretty useful. As you move through, there are a couple of reasonable choices in every era, the Carthaginians here potentially, but by and large, you want to be going builder, 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 baby, because this is really the key. It's about being able to use the builder affinity as well, land raiser, to convert everything else into industry if you need to, but just about building as many districts as possible. The emblematic quarters are, of course, very useful. Don't hang around in eras too long necessarily, though, unless you're really worried about tiebreakers and you need to go for maximum fame. I would recommend you don't hang around too long, particularly early on where the districts are good, but not groundbreakingly good. It's not worth wasting 10 turns or 5 turns for this when you could move through and build 2 Maker's Quarters to replace it, for example. By and large, though, I think Maya is a good pick. Khmer is a great pick because their district also counts as a farmer's quarter, so you get a bit of extra food and a little bit of extra pollution as well. As you move through, like I say, I chose Joseon in the early modern era. You might want to choose someone different, potentially a builder culture here, and then it gets interesting. Although first I should note, you might not want to play as Joe here in the industrial era. You may not need to move through and grab the technology soon like I did to hang around, particularly because it's really just the main number of turns that matter. I would suggest you try using a builder culture, the Muggles, in the early modern. You might want to choose a builder culture here again in the industrial era just to get, again, look, the Persians, fantastic, minus 25% on constructibles industry cost. That's great. That's a discount on everything, all of your districts. Is wonderful, and of course, still a builder. If you wanted to, you could choose the Siamese. Probably not quite as good, but you do you, Chief. Other alternatives, though, and there are potentially 2 spicy ones. The first is the French. You could beeline through to some really late technologies really quickly in the contemporary era. Do take care, though, because some of the technologies reduce pollution. So if you're choosing this strategy, you'll want to plan it out a little bit first. I think the arguably maybe spicier pick, no, it's not you, Italy, it's you, Germany. Not so much for this extra combat strength, although it could be useful in defending your borders from rebels in the late game as they start to appear as global stability drops to all-time lows. It's really about their unique district, though. This one provides plus 10 base pollution, and it counts as a Maker's Quarter as well. So you're going to get a whole load of industry and a little bit of extra pollution on top of that base plus 10. It could be an interesting pick, depending on how much pollution you've been able to produce already. I wouldn't rely on the Germans necessarily to carry me through, as they're not a builder culture, but if you're nearly there or you need the extra push, you're just about there, I think the Germans could be a really interesting pick. The final consideration is fame. It's really a tiebreaker thing here. Most players probably won't need to worry about it. Like I say, I didn't really worry about it too much, but it wasn't as much of a consideration for me. In general, it's probably not worth hanging around and waiting for extra stars when the turn timer is the primary focus. Other than that, my general advice would be just, like I say, fill it up with makers, support it with an array of garrisons were my choice. Because I only had Maker's Quarters, it didn't make a lot of sense to build commons. There are a couple of civics you might want to focus on, as well as religious benefits too, to keep in mind. Generally speaking, I actually went through and played without a lot of these enacted, but you can use something like artistic expression to potentially mess with stability. Punishment here, once everything starts to fall to custard, could be really useful, minus 80% stability loss per turn, but I found that once I got to the pollution threshold, it didn't matter. It was just beeline there. And that is about it from me. If you do decide to submit your score, don't forget that you'll need to keep a copy of your save. If you're a winner, you'll need to send your save in just to be like, see, I didn't cheat. This is the rules. I did it right. But like I was saying, if you do choose to submit, please at it on Twitter as well. I would love to see it. I'd love to see a score. I'd love to keep track of it because I'd love to see some of us win. Thank you very much for watching. Good luck with this community challenge. Limited time ending April 20th, and I will see you next time.